Respect is being paid to this very Asian drink that has blown up around the world. And is it in your teas? Is it in your product development? Who is on your staff? Who is on your cap table that is providing that for you?
It's a good question.
Man, I wanted my first video to be something incredibly nerdy and niche, like what are the mythological and cultural references in the game Nine Souls? Or why arguments defending slavery in isekai anime don't make any sense at all. But we're here instead. Now, some of you might have heard that there was a little bit of drama between Simu Liu, actor in shows and movies such as Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings and Kim's Convenience, and Boba. So recently on Dragon's Den, which is the Canadian version of Shark Tank, there was a company named Boba, spelled with two B's, B-O-B-B-A, that came on to pitch their product, which is alcoholic and popping pearl to-go versions of boba tea. And the drama stems from the fact that the two co-founders, who are clearly not Taiwanese or Chinese or East Asian at all, the two co-founders were pitching their drink in a specific way.
Talking about bubble tea, that trendy sugary drink you are queued up for and you are never quite sure about its content.
We have transformed this beloved beverage into a convenient and healthier, ready-to-drink experience. But it's not an ethnical product anymore.
Now, this episode has once again brought up the conversation of where do we draw the line between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation. Now, I could go into a detailed analysis of the video clips and of the pitch itself, but I want to keep the conversation a little broader. That being said, I do want to quickly give my piece about the pitch. I think Simu actually handled the conversation really well. I think he was fairly respectful. He was honestly even a little cautious about approaching the topic. He let the co-founders say their piece. He gave them opportunities. He asked some very pointed questions about cultural representation and cultural authenticity. But those are the type of questions that you as a business founder, marketing, especially selling an Asian, a primarily Asian product, are going to have to face. And they did not do a good job of answering the questions. When asked about what Asian representation or Asian partners they're working with, the only thing they can think of was a Taiwanese manufacturing company that they partner with, which, okay, that's great, but that's not the same thing as having someone of Taiwanese or Chinese or Asian American descent and background on your executive team, on your leadership team, or even someone just leading the marketing and pitch details and strategy. That seems like, not just a cultural representation, DEI type thing. That seems like a really valid marketing problem that they're going to have to face. But they didn't even have that level of cultural awareness prepared. But I want to bring the conversation away from boba/bubble tea. Partially because I think it's honestly kind of silly that the Asian diaspora community has made it such a crucial part of their identity and personality. That's probably the most controversial thing I'll say today. But I get it. Look, I love boba. I had boba today, and I get it because the Asian diaspora community feels stretched really thin between two very different cultures. And so when we do have something positive about our culture presented to a wider audience, we latch onto that. We rush in to quickly claim that as our own. And I have nothing against that. I'm just not in the business of making sure as many people drink boba as possible. But my point being is that this isn't the first time, and this won't be the last time we have this conversation. A couple years ago, there was an American white woman who opened a Chinese restaurant in New York City. And she said that her Chinese food was clean Chinese food, and that it wouldn't make you feel bloated or greasy like you typically do after eating Chinese food. Another time, there was two American white women who started a company selling mahjong tiles, but they redesigned and rebranded all the mahjong tiles to remove the traditional markings and replace them with, I guess, more American-friendly, easy-to-understand markings. My frustration comes mostly from the fact that whenever cultural appropriation is discussed, the minority group, whether it's African American or Asian American or Latino American, the ethnic minority group always has to justify why they feel annoyed or uncomfortable or even outraged at some particular thing appropriating their culture. Can Asian diaspora go too far in their outrage? Of course, definitely. Some people in reacting to this current incident have taken it too far, even going as far as sending threatening letters to the co-founders of the company Boba. That's not okay. But also, I'm just tired of always having to justify ourselves and always having to rely on others to deliver a repackaged and rebranded version of our cultural experiences and lived experiences in order to make it more palatable for a wider audience. Why is there no support for Asian and Asian American entrepreneurs or Asian and Asian American creators and storytellers? Why do we have to rely on other people to tell our stories? Beyond food and mahjong, we see this in other parts of our lives, such as entertainment as well. Now, this might be a more controversial take, but let's take, for example, the TV show Shogun. Now, I really liked Shogun, and I loved how involved Hiroyuki Sanada and his team was in producing the show. But there's a small part of me that was a little annoyed that instead of just depicting the actual historical events in Japanese history, even if we had to dramatize it a little bit, we decided to go with this historical fiction retelling of the events written by someone who was not of Japanese descent and did not have a Japanese background. And if we really wanted to tell a Japanese historical fiction story, we could have gone with amazing novelists like Aiki Yoshikawa and some of his stories, such as Taiko, which was actually set in roughly the same time period as Shogun was. But like I said, Shogun is actually a really good show, and despite its somewhat problematic origins, the team, under the guidance and leadership of Hiroyuki Sanada, really took it and made it their own and gave it a level of authenticity and genuineness that I haven't seen in most depictions of Asian and Asian American inspired stories. Other examples that I have talked about earlier, such as the mahjong in the restaurant, feel rather cheap and lazy. This is a more niche example, but as someone who works in the video game industry, I've seen this a little bit. But recently, the game Black Myth Wukong came out, which depicts Sun Wukong, the Monkey King from Journey to the West, and it became an instant hit. It's one of the most popular games that have came out this year. And the day that it released, hundreds of videos explaining the cultural and mythological references, explaining the background behind the characters, hundreds of videos dropped on YouTube. And some of these videos are really good. Some of these videos are made by people who clearly grew up in the culture or in a country or environment that was immersed in stories of Journey to the West and of characters such as Sun Wukong or Zhu Bajie. And they could give you interesting insights about how a certain voice direction was actually a reference to Beijing opera or to a TV show, or how an artistic depiction was some sort of Buddhist or Taoist religious symbolism. Other creators, such as scholars or historians or kind of mythological and literature experts, they could give lots of expertise and insight into the different versions that they have studied before. But among these really great videos, there's just a sea of, frankly, really lazy videos. Even if we pushed aside AI garbage with the robot voice, just breaking down characters and concepts of the game into like 30 seconds of digestible TikTok/YouTube shorts, there's also just a lot of creators who clearly looked at Wikipedia for 10 or 15 minutes and didn't even bother trying to pronounce the name correctly, and yeah. That's not to say that people who aren't from Asian backgrounds can't share these foods or games or stories. I know there's some debate over this, but personally I think anyone should be able to wear a Chinese qipao or hanfu or a Japanese kimono. with the caveat that you give it the right level of cultural appreciation. Where that line of cultural appreciation is, it's going to be different from everyone. And if you're someone not from that culture, engaging and sharing that culture, you're just going to have to assume the risk that and the burden that there's going to be some segments, some group of people who are less than happy with your use of it. But I think more importantly than just cultural appreciation, because I believe that some of these people do appreciate the culture. I believe that the woman who started Mahjong Line truly liked playing Mahjong and sharing the game of Mahjong with other people. But I think more importantly is that if you're taking from a culture, as Simu Liu said, you have the burden of showing who are you partnering with? Who are you teaming up with from that culture and from that community? How are you uplifting that community rather than just taking their place? The company Boba couldn't point to a single person on their immediate team to deliver even that minuscule amount of cultural representation and cultural awareness, right? The team over at Mahjong Line depicted here has no one of Asian or Asian American descent. I understand the harsh reality that sometimes you do need people outside of your culture to help kind of structure and rebrand your stories in a way to reach a wider audience. But if you're the person that can help with that, if you're the person who wants to share someone else's culture with a wider audience, you can't just take it as your own and run with it. You have to actually come back and uplift the community and culture that you took from and help them share their stories and their experiences. Are my videos from here on out just going to be Asian culture rage bait? God, I hope not. I just want to reach my goal of learning how to play Valorant from a porn star.